Now, our next guest is a director and producer, best known, of course, for Riverdance. He is also an accomplished photographer and has always had a keen interest in human rights issues. His new book, Looking at the Same Moon, documents the lives of people in Palestine and Guatemala through photographs.
Yes, John McColgan joins us now with more on this. Good morning to you, John.
Morning, John.
Good morning.
Good
How nice to be outdoors.
It's lovely to be out fresco.
Beautiful.
It's quite the novelty, isn't it?
It's fantastic.
And look at that
Thank you
view,
for joining
John.
us.
It's amazing. You see the Dublin Mountains there.
Let's talk about this beautiful piece of work that you were saying the Trócaire published, but obviously you've contributed because you did the photographs. It's called Looking at the Same Moon. Tell us first about your association with Trócaire, John.
Well, it started with my brother, Jerry. You probably know Jerry McColgan. He had done a number of documentaries with Trócaire. I had a photographic exhibition for the Hoth lifeboat, which raised 40 grand for the lifeboat, and I sold a number of pictures called Hoth Horizons. And Jerry said to me, would you do something for Trócaire? And I said, yeah. So he brought me in to meet the Trócaire people. And they asked me, would I go abroad on their missions to various locations and cover photographically the situations there. So I was very excited to do that and honoured to do it. And Trócaire are an amazing organisation. They have 400 people in 20 countries, defenders of human rights. So it felt really good. They're very organised, they're very passionate, and they do an enormous amount of good work around the world. So it's an honour to be a Trócaire ambassador.
Well, was photography, I never knew that was a string to your bow, John. Was that something that's gone back years?
It's only in the last maybe 7 or 8 years. I was always taking pictures. I bought my first camera in Woolworths for 10 shillings when I was 14. Anybody remembers what Woolworths is?
Or shillings, indeed.
But about 8 years ago, I decided I wanted to take my photography more seriously. So I apprenticed myself to a guy called Peter Gordon, who lives out in Booterstown, and he's an award-winning landscape photographer. He's been photographer of the year 4 or 5 years in a row, and he's European photographer of the year. He's since become a friend. But I've been apprenticed, and he's mentoring me, and I've been to Iceland, I've been to Croatia, where his Croatia. Where his wife is from Croatia, so I was sending him all text last night. But he's a great guy, and we go abroad on photographic landscape photography, which is entirely different than the portrait stuff in this book. But we get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and we take the beautiful light on beautiful locations, which he's recceed, and he goes abroad with a group of 8 people who are all passionate, like-minded photographers, and I love it. It's great fun.
It's a lovely hobby, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But you've put your hobby to good use, certainly, in this book, John. Can we talk about some of the pictures?
Sure.
The first one I think we're going to bring up is the city of Hebron. This is an image of the historic city.
We had it up there. Yeah, we had it up there.
Did we? Yes.
There we go.
Hebron was a beautiful, vibrant town market area. And the Israelis took it over, and they expelled all the Palestinians who can't get back into their houses. The houses are locked up, and it's a very scary place. It's a deserted village. And I didn't know much. I mean, I read and I researched before I went to Palestine and Gaza. But what you see there and the human rights abuses really shocked me. It really shocked me how the people, particularly in Gaza, are treated. There are 2 million people in this little space, and their light and water are running out. They're not let in, they're not let out, and that's where the big protests were on the 14th of May. There were 50 unarmed Palestinians shot dead by the Israeli military, and it really is an outrage, and you can't forget something that you've seen, and the blatant abuse of human rights there, and the dignity of the people putting up with it. And that's what I tried to reflect in the photographs, the dignity of the Palestinians who have been subjected to horrific attack, and they're on the verge of no electricity. No, there's going to be a famine there in the coming years. I mean, it really is an awful situation.
Women protesters from the book we're seeing as well. 15-year-old Palestinian boy.
Yeah. Well, the 15-year-old Palestinian boy was, they were Bedouin folks, and he came out and he made tea, and I said hello to him, And he shook his head, and his father explained to me through an interpreter that about 2 years before, the Israeli military had come in the middle of the night, they'd fired out shots, knocked over furniture, just terrorizing them to make them move out of their homes so they could knock them down. And the boy was 12 then, and he lost the power of speech, and he hasn't been able to speak since. So there are many, many stories of the effects of the abuse of the Palestinians by the Israelis.
And when you see things like that, John, as you say, that you can't unsee it, and when you're up close, and you've got so close because you're giving us such an insight in this book, how does that affect you personally? 'Cause you take it away with you.
You do take it away, but there's a number of things. You realise how fortunate, and it's a selfish thought, and how lucky we are to live in this country and to live in this sort of society. And you see so many communities in those worlds who are living in fear, and they're abused, and you never forget it. And the other thing that occurs to you, and particularly the women, the resilience and the strength in a lot of these communities, I have been so impressed by the women, and they tell intimate stories about their 2 or 3 children being blown up and killed. One boy's lost his thumb. One woman had 11 of her family and extended family blown up in the bombing in 2014. But they tell you these stories with impassive stoicism. There's no tears.
Yeah.
And I think if it was here, I don't know what the
heartbreaking.
culture, but they're so immune or accepting of. So they tell you about their life in these stories, and the deaths of their children, the abuse they've
They're
suffered.
hardened to it, John, because they're surrounded by it from when they were children.
Exactly. So if it was here, if it was your child or mine, we'd be in bits telling the story.
Of course.
But they tell that story. We can see the pain.
Yeah, you can.
But they're so stoic and so brave and so resilient.
John, before we let you go, we'll talk about where people can buy the book in a moment. But Riverdance, in the middle of its summer run at the moment.
Yeah, Riverdance is in its 15th year in the Gaiety.
Incredible, isn't it?
And it's doing better business this
15
year than
years
it's ever
on.
done.
Really?
Yeah, and 80% would be tourists, 20% would be locals who come back. Some people go to see it every year.
Every year, yeah.
But we're very, very lucky. It's in great shape. There's sort of full standing ovations every night. And people who haven't seen it for years call me and say, "Oh my God, it's better than ever."
Blown me away.
So it's
yeah,
great.
it's not
And
something you're going to get tired of, realistically,
is
is
it
it?
still the monster that it was, John, in terms of, is it still touring? Is it still appearing
tour-
all over the world?
Yeah. We've just finished a tour in North America. We finished a tour in China. We were in Germany. And we're off the road for a year this year because we're getting ready for the 25th anniversary tour.
My
You were only
goodness.
15 when it started.
Exactly. So we're reimagining the show, new lighting, new set, new sound, new
Fantastic.
numbers in the show.
Oh,
And we're
fantastic.
launching it in Radio City Music Hall in 2020.
That'd be a quiet night, John.
Be a quiet
Yes,
night.
exactly. A low-key affair. Looking at the Same Moon is out now.
Yeah.
You buy it through Trócaire, John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to indulge me.
Please,
I have
yes.
a beautiful granddaughter called Lola, and I told her I was going to be on the TV,
Wow.
and she's watching.
Hi, Lola.
You better
Hello,
say
Lola.
hi, Lola.
I love you.
Grandad says hello.
Bye.
Very sweet. John McColgan, a pleasure as always. Thank you
Good to
for
see you,
joining.
John. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.